So you also have done a lot of work as far as being a producer, an engineer, and that sort of thing. You're a studio rat, basically. Tell us about some of your clients. Who have you worked for? Who have you done records for?
Well, can I brag?
Yes, please.
I love bringing attention to people, especially good people. And there's quite a few lately here that we've done. Basically, I have a building outside of my residence, and that's sound.
So just to be clear, you're in Nashville, correct?
I'm just north of Nashville. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, continue.
So we've had some really cool people. We've recorded Abby Kay up here. And she's kind of like a young rock kind of pop. I wouldn't call it pop or punk, but it's definitely got edge to it. She's a metalhead, and super great bass player and plays with some really great people. She does the Broadway thing a lot in Nashville, a lot of musicians do, to fill the void. But so Abby Kay is recorded here, and actually Troy Laketta, formerly a Tesla, and a good friend of mine, Jeff Kersey. We produced 3 songs for her at Troy's studio initially, and then she came here and did some stuff. The Neon Angels have recorded 3 or 4 with us. I think they just put out their 3rd or 4th single out of here. So they're going to go into next year strong, and that's a cool rock band. A lot of influences of Joan Jett, that kind of thing, but a modern twist on it.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. Just a lot of little projects like that. I get to do things. Here's the cool thing when you have your own studio. I get to do really cool stuff. So my wife has put out singles, and she's an amazing songwriter, singer. My son, we're about to start tracking him. He's kind of on that rap R&B side.
Cool, man.
So yeah. So
nice.
I got to work with a lot of great musicians and a lot of great bands here lately, but the fun thing is we get to turn that inward now a little bit and let this talent within the family, because they're amazing too. And so I'm excited about doing more of that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So as a producer, who are some of your idols? Who in the production world is like your Eddie Van Halen or your John Lennon when you're wearing your producer's hat?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, originally you look at people and it's funny. I would say, and this one I would say more engineer, but I love the fact that Tom Schultz was responsible for not just using his gear in an amazing way, but building it and having the wherewithal to think forward. And even people like Stevie Wonder, when you think about how Kurzweil and all that came about, when the first samplers and synths went that direction, and there's a lot of even musicians in on that design and composition of those kind of things, which took music in a different direction. So that would be early on. But then, people like Rubin, and Michael Wagner. I mean, you listen to their body of work, and Michael's a good friend, which blows my mind because, he produced a soundtrack to my life, so to speak.
And he's out there your way too, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah.
He is. And he's retired, which.
Wow. Yeah. And doesn't he have a studio in his backyard or inside his house, or he
did Wire World. Yeah.
Yeah. Is he so retired? Is he keeping the studio and just going to lease it or what?
So you can stay, either of you, if you would like to stay in his studio, because it's now kind of an Airbnb.
Oh,
so he sold off a lot of the gear, but it still looks like Wire World. It's just more of like a house setting.
Okay.
And I haven't been to it since he changed it over, since he got rid of all the gear. I went to it several times when it had gear, but
I've seen countless photos of people, yucking it up just in there and within the walls of that place. But I haven't spent very much time in Nashville, or,
it's something.
I bet.
It's something
cool.
that, well, you walk in and in the entry, there's been 2 times in my life that I've been really odd. One, I produced a country band called Sequoia this was in Evergreen, Colorado, at Denny Seraphin's private studio that he opened up for some projects. Danny Seraphin, drummer for Chicago.
Okay.
And I didn't think he was going to be there. I talked to his studio manager at the time, and this band had kind of sought me out at another studio. I was working at a studio called Omega Audio, and they wanted me to produce the record. And we went up there, and when I walked in, you look at all the gold and platinum, and I didn't realize Danny Serafin had written so much of that. Like you were saying about drummers actually writing song.
There you go.
And incredibly responsible for all these Chicago hits. And the wall is plastered as I'm going. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm in there. I'm trying to speed this up. But second day, I think I'm tracking them or something like that. And he had it really wired more for a drum studio as opposed to just a band tracking studio, and so we kind of moved some things around a little bit, kind of rewired some stuff, just to get the flow a little faster.
Mm-hmm. Efficient.
And I remember one of the days I was in there getting a tap on the shoulder from him, and he's in this Kangol hat, and I turned to my side, it's him. And he's like, hey man, how's everything going? I see you kind of move some things around, but everything working out for you? And I'm just thinking, oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, talk about being on the spot. And he sat around for a couple hours and listened and liked it.
Wow.
And took off. But so that was the first time. Second time was Michael Wagner's, because you can meet him out and you know him or whatever, but then you walk in a wire world and you see what's on the wall.
Yeah.
And you realize you're this big. You're like, I thought it was decent 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And no.
Wow.
Different kind of crown.
But there's many, Nick Raskalenis. There's so many guys. There's another guy I'm kind of starting to work with now. There's a million, but anyway.
Yeah. I only ask because, I don't have the least bit of talent as far as that goes, but I do have, my favorite albums. And I noticed that, there's oftentimes a link between those albums, and it's the producer. And Jason and I on this show, we did an entire episode on Martin Birch. Oh. And Martin, of course, did two of my top three favorite albums of all time, The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden and Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. And then, of course, you go down the rabbit hole and he did Blue Oyster Cult and just a bunch of other stuff. So there's this thread. And so I wanted to ask you the question because you've actually sat in the chair and actually done the work. So you're obviously more of a student of that type of thing. You have the ears.
Not like those guys, though.
Well, more so than me, for sure. So that's just why I asked, if there was anybody out there that you sort of modeled yourself after or that inspired you.
Yeah, it's a good coffee table conversation that we like to get people such yourselves involved with.
I think the people that I've been around, and some of which I've got to work with in one way or another, the best producers have a sense about them. There's a calmness, because people forget oftentimes, and depending on the project, if it's independent, if it's label or something like that, the producer wears a lot of hats. It's not just about getting the best for the song. It's about monitoring budget. It's about logistics, and then being able to listen to something in its raw form, know what the hooks are, know what the hook around the hook is, the little things, the nuances that maybe everybody else isn't hearing, but what's going to, in the long run, impact the song the most for the everyday listener. It's those little things. It's like the reading between the lines.
Yeah.
And then being able to be a glorified babysitter to an artist, which sometimes is super easy and sometimes not so easy, and then pulling that out of them. So it really is such an important task. It's, in my opinion, it's still an underrated task. I know people in the industry go, man, that producer, because they know, they get it, they've seen it happen. But the average listener, they're like, oh, somebody produced this. What does it mean to them? And if they could actually see the amount of work that goes in and what really happens with songs at times. So the best ones I've ever been around have a real calm nature to them and a very positive side to them. Yeah. You can't walk into a session, have somebody in a booth and go, Oh man, that take sucked. I'm gonna need you to do that like a couple more. We got to get that high better. You know, do you need more tea? Because I can feel it. You just sound like you do that, you just lost your session, and you probably lost your client, and you're not going to get anything good from them.
Yeah.
There's an approach, and it's, hey man, okay, that was awesome. I really liked what you did there. Give me one. Let's get one with a different flavor and a different texture. Just for fun, try one where you're doing this. Maybe try a few of these, right? I'm gonna let it roll, or let's go back and get that, and then we're gonna listen and find the best because you're doing such great stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's a much
I like
better
that.
approach.
I like that. I like that.
Right?
You're
There's an element. There's an element of being a people person and being diplomatic in order to get the end result, and that's a skill. That's a skill that goes beyond technical ability. That's a personality skill.